God dwells in you. Oh Dios, tú nos hiciste a tu propia imagen y nos redimiste por Jesús tu Hijo. Mira en tu compasión a toda la familia humana. Quita el odio y la arrogancia que nos corrompen el corazón. Derrumba las barreras que nos separan. Únedos en vínculos de amor. Y actúa a través de nuestra lucha y confusión a fin de cumplir tus propósitos en la tierra, para que a su debido tiempo todas las naciones y razas te sirvan en armonía alrededor de tu trono celestial. Por Jesucristo nuestro Señor. Amen. O God, you made us in your own image and redeemed us through Jesus your Son. Look with compassion on the whole human family. Take away the arrogance and hatred which infect our hearts. Break down the walls that separate us, unite us in bonds of love, and work through our struggle and confusion to accomplish your purposes on earth, that in your good time all nations and races may serve you in harmony around your heavenly throne, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Welcome. It is wonderful to have you all here. My name is Mike Kinman. I'm the rector here at All Saints Church. If you are new or visiting us this morning and would love to know more about future events and how to get more involved in the All Saints community, we have green contact sheets at both doors. You can just take a moment and give us your contact information. Also on the welcome table on the lawn, you can pick up a red welcome bag, which includes a welcome card. You can take it with you and send it back or just fill it out on the spots. The restrooms are just around the corner there and to the right. Also want to take time, everyone wave at the camera. Welcome everybody who's streaming us. We get streamers around the country and around the world. And it is wonderful to have you all here. At all times we put our faith into action at All Saints Church, and every week we pick one or two things to focus that action as an institution. This week we're reacting to the Attorney General's ruling this week that would severely limit the ability of women and girls fleeing domestic violence to obtain asylum in the United States. We're doing this by asking Congress to pass legislation on immigration that would respect and enhance instead of eroding our potential to preserve and protect people who are fleeing truly life-threatening conditions by giving them asylum. So there are also, at this table over here, we have those petitions and letters that we can sign to our members of Congress. So please don't leave without doing that. Finally, this community is sustained by so many things. It's sustained by huge amounts of the Holy Spirit. It's sustained by incredible work and energy of so many people, and it's sustained by your financial generosity. And so we would ask that wherever you are, whether in here or whether you're online, if you're online, you can just click that button and donate. It's right below the screen that you're looking on. If you're here, I can't give you a button to click, but I will say if you have made your pledge for 2018, thank you so much. That makes such a huge difference. If you have not made your pledge for 2018, there is still plenty of time, although we would love to have you do it as soon as possible. You can see me or Jim LaDuha or a member of the staff, and we'll get you set up. And thank you for your generosity. I am thrilled to have today the second part of what really was one of the most energizing and wonderful forums that we've had since I've been here, which was our own All Saints Church Youth. You may remember in March, this group and some others were in front of us talking about what they were prepared to do in terms of the trip to Washington, D.C., and also into downtown Los Angeles for March for Our Lives, how this growing student movement was moving them and affecting their lives. And we have asked them to come back. It is now several months later. And this movement is continuing through them and through others, and we wanted to give them a chance to speak to the rest of us and tell us what is on their hearts and what is on their minds, and maybe what word they have for the rest of us as a church family. And so I'm going to sit down, and I want to turn it over to our Director of Youth, Jeremy Lanchel. Jeremy.
As Mike mentioned, my name is Jeremy Langell, and I'm in charge of Children, Youth, and Families, Formation, and the Youth Director. And so I'm very happy to be leading or working with our youth as we lead this forum today. So we're going to start with having them say your name, your grade, and whether you were in DC or Los Angeles. So we'll start here.
My name is Adelaide. I'm going into 10th grade, and I was in Los Angeles.
My name is Hayden. I'm going into 10th grade, and I was in DC.
My name is Imani. I'm going into 10th grade, and I was in Los Angeles.
My name is Sam. I'm going to be a freshman in college in August, and and I was in LA.
My name is Jeremy. I am going into 10th grade, and I was in DC.
I'm Gray. I'm going to be a junior, and I was in DC.
Hi, my name's Rory. I'm going into 10th grade, and I was in DC, and I took over All Saints Twitter.
Hi, my name is Dennis. I'm going to be a college freshman, and I was in LA.
Hi, I'm Phoebe. I am going to be going into 11th grade, and I was in DC.
Hi, I'm Anne Moret. I'm going to be a freshman in college, and I was in DC.
So we had 13 youth total who traveled to Washington, D.C. They're not all here today, and 3 chaperones. I believe we had 6 youth in Los Angeles who were leading that effort, and then also meeting with Congresswoman Chu. And so I think we're just going to jump in. And so the key components for this event was participating in the March for Our Lives, the march, but then also meeting with their representatives. And I think that the youth will highlight those different experiences as we go forward this morning. So in my email to you earlier this week, one of the things I asked you to reflect on was what was a really moving moment and experience, something that you took away from your time with this work, either in DC or Los Angeles. And we'll just start with whoever has their hand go up. Or we can call on someone. There you go, Gray.
I think for me, the most moving moment was we were in the meeting with Judy Chu's staff in DC, and a few minutes before, we were told that a few kids from Stoneman Douglas were going to join in on the meeting, and we were like, thanks for the heads up. And so we get in there, and so what happened was the girl from Stoneman Douglas walks in, and she was wearing a sweatshirt that said Stoneman Douglas Soccer on it. And it was a wow moment, because we're here in LA, and we're like, of course it happened, and it's something that these kids went through, but it didn't really hit me until we were in that moment, because then you're like, these are real people, and it becomes a lot more of an important and weighted experience when that happens.
So my most kind of reflective and powerful event that happened in DC, the area, was on the night before the march. Yeah, it was before the march. We went to a gun violence vigil at the National Cathedral. This was after a day of deep reflectiveness with staff from Judy Chu and Adam Schiff and around the Capitol, including losing Stella, but that's neither here nor there. But that vigil was super important and inspiring, because you hear the stories that are not heard. On the news, when you hear about a tragedy, you hear from politicians. You hear from maybe a couple of people leading the charge against it. You don't typically hear these really emotional, unfiltered stories from families and friends grieving for their children that were just murdered with something that supposedly is supposed to protect us. I mean, that's the whole reason why, that's the argument for AR-15s. They protect against bad guys. And because of that, their kids were just murdered, and you hear them, you hear the grief they're going into, and you hear the stories of them. Like, you hear, they talked about one, the mother was talking just about how such a good kid he was, and everything about him, and how, like, he was going to do this and this. I think it was to him. Yeah. And then one of his friends came on, and he was talking about how he was, no, it is a she. My mind's not here. How she was going to, they're going to do a duet on the piano, and he never showed up. And so she was left without doing that performance. And this was a couple days before she died, and her friend, he was up there talking about this. And you have to remember that it kind of puts them in that these are people, they're living your average teenage life, and it's just kind of, it just makes it really sad.
For me, one of the most moving experiences was being part of the march. And it was contradictory in a way because I felt at once very small, like there were these huge tall buildings on either side and all these people, and I was very small. And yet I also felt very important, like my voice was important and this march was better for having me there.
I think one of the most powerful things I heard was one of the speakers in the vigil said that every day there's now an empty seat in the classroom where one of their friends sat who was killed. And it just made me think, when I'm at school, I don't really notice the empty chairs. Like, I notice when my friends are gone, but then I'm like, oh, they're probably sick, or they're they're ditching or whatever, and it's like, it doesn't double cross my mind like, oh no, what happened to them? I don't reach to my phone and start asking, where are you? But after a tragedy like that, just constantly being reminded, like, there was a person sitting there, and no matter how many times I call them, no matter how many times I text them or ask their parents where they are, the answer will always be, they're gone, they're not coming back. So that really struck something inside me.
One of the most remarkable moments, I think, was after the march when we were all hanging out on the floor and we were just talking about it. And Jeremy always likes to do this thing where he's like, okay, guys, let's reflect. And we're always like, Jeremy, I just want food. So we started reflecting. He didn't even ask us to reflect, but so much had happened that day that we all just kind of started talking. And then it was like 2 hours in, food had been ready for like 20 minutes, and we were still talking. And so we were like, okay, let's move this over to the dinner table. And it was this round oval table, and we just started talking, and even more talking, and it kind of looked like we were all in a big conference. And in that moment, it was like we had been inspired by what we'd seen, and we were planning all of these things, and we were being collaborative. And obviously, when you have a bunch of teenagers together, there's going to be conflict. Like, not everyone likes each other, sorry to say. But and we were respecting each other, and we were working towards a common goal, and we were trying to get stuff done. And I think that was a really, really important moment because we were all unified, and we were working towards a common goal. And I think that was probably the most important moment of the whole trip.
So talking about like working towards a common goal and actually making a difference, there was a speaker at the march. There were lots of speakers at the march, but in the DC march, one of the students who had been involved in a shooting in his childhood gave a speech talking about how they didn't do anything. And this was one of the people, of course, from Sandy Hook. And he was talking about, how they had spent so much time being sad. And everyone in the country had been sad, but they hadn't moved on to the point that the Stoneman Douglas kids had to actually work on making a difference. And I think that's a lot of what happens is we get trapped in the sad stories, and we get trapped in the mentality of like, we are just gonna be sad, and it's enough to be sad, but there's no way to stop that cycle unless we actually move forward and get something done. And so that was a speech that, I don't know, it really made me think because of, we all get stuck in that loop. We all sit down and just, we'll cry about these things that we hear on the news, or we'll have moments of silence for all these sorts of things, but it's fairly rare that we actually try and start something from these experiences that we or our friends or other people that we don't even know have had. So that was something that hit me very hard.
I'll tell you a funny story too. Just as we were getting on the plane, we had this 6 a.m. flight on Thursday morning, so we were here at like 3:45 in the morning. I'm here a lot, but not usually at 3:45 in the morning. And we're getting on the plane, and Rory has this megaphone, right? And we're like stepping out of the tunnel to get onto the plane. I was like, Rory, are the batteries out of that thing? Yes, they are. Good. Okay. Because I could see that coming from the back of the plane the entire flight. Rory letting us know she's there, which is really powerful. Yeah. Basically that. So I'm wondering, I want to check in, with Sam, Imani, Hayden, let's see, Dennis, just if there's a story, an experience you'd like to share, because we haven't heard from you yet.
Sorry. It was like a really good reflecting moment for me. That's why I like being signed. But there was like one powerful moment for me, I guess. There was a guy that came in that was, at every march there's someone that's not on the side of like what everyone else is. And it was funny because I was kind of waiting for that, but it's represented so much because how small he was when everyone kind of looks at him, and it wasn't even like there was an argument. There was nothing there. It was kind of just like laughing at like, why are you even here? Like, you're at a march with everyone else is fighting for one cause. And it kind of represents to me like that's what it should be like, because I really do think we have the right mindset of just something simple like protect our kids from not dying because of gun violence. And anyone else who thinks that, it's just kind of something that you should laugh at and be like, you're not even relevant to this anymore, because then we can push farther to what we actually want to do and like fulfill our goal. And yeah, that just represented a lot to me.
I think I had like a pretty regular march experience, but I think it just like felt really good to be marching with like a huge group of people that all like wanted the same thing that you did. So it was just like, really empowering and stuff. So yeah, that's all I had to say.
I thought the whole march was just really powerful. Everyone is there for like the same, I guess, cause, if you want to put it. And, it's really cool, like I said again, just be marching with everyone that wants to change, wants to like, keep our kids safe and keep guns out of irresponsible owners. It's like, it's really cool to be part of that movement, and I got backstage passes too, so.
Well, I'm not really sure. I guess one of the most like impactful moments of that time was hearing about the victims, and I guess when I was like hearing about the victims, I thought about my friends in St. Louis and like how much I like treasured them, and basically I just kept thinking about like how unfortunate it would be if I were to lose one of them in like a school shooting, and yeah.
So, kind of transitioning a little bit, one of the things that I also asked them to reflect on is what do they think the movement looks like going forward, and this is a really important question because ultimately the movement involves all of us, and I think what you all have demonstrated to me, was that not only are you ready to lead, but that we really need to center your voices as we move forward, listening to your leadership and being led. So I'm wondering, what does that look like for you? It's now June, right? So it's been a few months. We have elections coming up. Some of you are now 18. When you weren't 18, you are 18. So what does that look like for you moving forward? What are the action steps? not even an action step, just where is your sense of the movement and where is your sense of where we need to go?
I think one important thing is I was watching a couple videos of the march after, and even people like who are at the march, you notice that when you ask them questions about gun violence and what they know, it's basically like 2 facts usually that everyone else really knows. And I think that, especially for us, because we did so much preparation with Judy Chu and like talking to the representatives and just getting on this march, we like learned a lot about gun violence and why we actually want to stop it. And if we have this information, we should be sharing it. And it's very important that everyone is informed and educated about it, so when they get asked this, they know what their real cause is. And like, for example, so the senior high talked to the junior high. Yeah, and so we did like a thing where we played a Kahoot, which is like, everyone's excited when you say it because it's a fun game. So we did a game like that where we asked them questions about gun violence, and the questions weren't as complicated as you think, but like a lot of them were surprised because they were getting them wrong and like thinking there was something else. So it's just good that, especially for the youth, to know about gun violence, you know? And yeah, I think that's our next step, is just educating more people. Obviously, voting if you're 18, that's very important, because there's a lot of us turning 18 that, I don't know, especially our generation, is very amazing how many people have this mindset. But yeah, so.
In case you don't know what Kahoot is, because I didn't know what it was either, don't feel bad. It's the system where they can pre-program questions in, and it appears on a screen. So the question pops up, and then everyone sitting in their group has a tablet, and the question appears in your tablet, and you can answer it right away, and then it auto-tabulates on the screen. And it was an amazingly easy, effective tool. I know Jeremy spent a lot of time putting that together, and they all worked on doing that together, and I was very impressed. And also, the middle schoolers loved it. And when they said Kahoot, the middle schoolers just like went crazy. I was like, what is this thing? So that's what that is.
I only learned about it this year when my high school health and global studies classes, both of the classes went crazy when they said Kahoot. Fortunately, I don't like the game, but it's actually quite fun to set up. And while setting it up, I thought the questions, some of them were easy, ridiculously easy, because I'd been on the march, I'd done the research, I knew this. But when it actually played out, the answers I was getting, it scared me. Because some of them were off, some of them were too optimistic, and it was kind of bad. Even from some of the people in the room, in this forum, I'm not going to say names because, but I talked to them after, and it was just like, it surprised me that these people who are even involved in the decision-making didn't know. And I just want to jump off of that, but I answered the question why I think it's moving forward with a kind of a bit of a story. On the flight back from DC, I sat with a 6th grader, she's now a 7th grader, Stella, who, as of kind of this year, is the only middle school represented, as the other one, Karis, is now in high school. But I sat with her the entire flight back. We took 2 flights, and I was with her the entire time. And kind of especially the second flight back, when we were surrounded by a bunch of people in the center aisle, in the center of the plane, of this big plane, and I see her, she's sleeping next to me after the internet went out on my phone and she can't watch videos anymore. And it kind of dawns on me that she's the future, that this is where we go. A lot of people think that we're the future, but it's kind of not true. We're the present. We're the ones mobilizing, getting it now. But we need to look forward to the next generation, to the people actually going to do something. Because, to be honest, I don't think Congress is really going to change in our high school life. I mean, it might get somewhere to 2018, but that's optimistic. And I'm a pessimist, so that's fine. And I know most of us here will be able to vote for the next president. Not all of us here is, because I'm a month away from the deadline. So I'm lucky, and I know some people here are younger than me. So, but we need to be looking towards not just 2020, but 2022 and 2024. And this is where the middle schools come in. And it kind of, doing this realization, it gave me warm, fuzzy feelings, because I can't think of the word right now, because we all mobilizing, we all inspiring middle schoolers to come on this trip. I mean, she should be figuring out, she's going through middle school, which is a difficult time in your life, especially 6th grade, figuring out what's happening, like this new area, but instead she's flying halfway across the country to march against guns, and that's impactful. I think we need more of that.
Definitely think moving on with this issue, I think educating just people in general as much as we can is going to really help bring the issue to light more. I still think it's a little clouded in some people's minds, but you know, if we keep bringing it up, if we keep bringing it up and educating, you know, younger generations, even the present generations, I think it's going to make a bigger impact too.
Brent?
So I agree with the education, but I also, for me, I feel like in talking to my parents and talking in general with all the reflective thought we had on the trip and after the trip, is that the things that got us the most weren't the facts, but the emotions. And I feel like it's not just about, it really isn't just about the facts. It's like when we see these stories and hear these stories, we're relating to the emotions, and I feel like if we open up that emotional conversation as well with people that aren't responsive, ask them why. Why don't you feel anything towards this movement? Why are you, like, what do you feel when you have access to these guns? And what do you feel when you hear that even if you don't have children, someone else lost their children? And can you put yourself in the shoes of those who have lost their children? Or the idea of being at school and being paranoid about what's gonna happen every day. So I do agree with educations. I think facts are very important, but I also think the emotions behind these facts and the ignorance or the pushing forward is something that we should focus on as well. So
I definitely agree with that. I think the emotional side of it is very important, but there's also this other side of people that don't think the same way that the general group in this room does. And I think we close them off. I mean, after this march, I was very much, I was politically driven. I was like, oh yeah, let's get them, right? And so I started, doing research. I started looking at other sorts of different things. And I came across this one very interesting video online, which was just parents explain school shootings to their kids. And these were elementary school kids. And I was expecting it to be something where it was people saying, oh, this happened, I love you, this is why we don't want guns. Because I was expecting for them to be like me. But I got this, there were quite a few people in the video that when they were explaining to their kids, they started crying, and I was like, oh, well, yeah, of course, this is really emotional. And then they would say, this is why Dad and I have a gun, or this is why we keep a gun in our household. And a lot of the times we demonize these people and we forget that they are people as well, their parents, their fathers, and they're trying to protect their kids, and they don't know, they just either don't know the facts or they don't open themselves up to the facts. And so I think we have to be the first people to reach out to them. Personally, I think right here we can invite some people with differing opinions to come and speak. I think that is something that is amazing. I mean, I had an experience where I was in a similar sort of setting, a forum for people who were LGBTQ+. And there was someone who raised their hand in the middle of the forum and started talking about how they were from a very Christian family, very traditional Christian family. They didn't really agree with what was happening. And then they asked us the question of, so why are you here? Why do you agree? Because I don't understand. And so they had put themselves in a group, in a whole room of people who thought differently from they did, and they had asked that question. And I think that that's something that we can very much benefit from, is having a different mindset and having us bounce ideas off of each other and educate each other, because we're not going to get anywhere by moving farther apart. We have to agree on something. And so I want to invite Mike Kinman to, bring in different ideas, and I want to see there be conversations happening. Rallies are good. Getting excited about a movement is good, but we also have to, see the other side.
So there was a moment during the March for Our Lives in DC, and I just want to say this about that march. Every single speaker was a youth speaker. It was astoundingly well organized, and it crossed they talked about class, privilege. They had speakers, students from Chicago, students from South Los Angeles, students from all over the country. And it was really well done. And the last student to speak was Emma. And there was a moment where she paused about a minute and a half into her presentation, and she just stopped talking. I was standing actually next to Mike, and there was 6 minutes of silence. And it was weird to be in a space with 800,000 people and just silence. And then she came back in and said, "That's how long the shooting was." And so there was this, and it reminded me of a conversation I had with a parishioner, and we're going to move into a time here for you all to ask some questions. But in that conversation, there was this comment of, I remember being in these really important places. What can we do to have our youth be in these really important places, to give them these opportunities and these experiences? And so it was an interesting moment because it also brought everybody here into the space with me in that moment. And I know that's something that we talked about as well. And so before we move into questions, I just want to honor and acknowledge there were a lot of people who put a lot of work into putting this trip together, from staff, Juliana Serrano, myself, who else? May Choi, who really were working behind the scenes, Jim Laduha, Mike Kinman, to kind of get everything organized. We also had 29 donors who donated, which completely covered our airfare for all 16 people who went. And that's and that happened in a way which was spirit-filled and spirit-led. The Gun Violence Prevention Task Force gave us really important materials to work with. We couldn't have done any of our congressional meetings without that work. Barrett Anderson also went with us. She was a volunteer. And then we had Mike's in-laws who hosted us, half the group, and then the Pagets hosted us, the other half of us. So, there was this amazing effort that came together to make this trip possible. Really, and Day One also joined us across the street. So, and this all happened in a matter of weeks, I think, in terms of getting it done. So I want to open up Juliana. We'll give one of the mics to Juliana. Phoebe, you want to, or that's fine, Sam. And if there's a question, Juliana can get to you, and then you all can answer as you.
Hi, I'm Justin McNeil, and I just want to thank you for all the work that you all have done. And I remember watching on television the program the march and the speeches, and I was so struck by the words, the intelligence, the strength that the youth projected. So thank you for that. One thing I want to share is that I, growing up, never had to think about this at all. And that's what strikes me as most disturbing, is having to think about not being safe in school. So all I want to ask is, what do you think the most powerful thing as an adult without a child can do to make change? And I'd just like to hear one or two of those. I know I can write my congressperson, I know I can do that. I want to hear from the kids, the youth, the young adults, what we can do.
I say the most powerful thing that you can do is try to remember, at least for me, is that try to remember that you were once a child and that you were afraid maybe of the dark, or you were afraid to sleep with your door closed because if it opened at night you wouldn't know what happened. And so just remember that you were a kid and that you were afraid and you wanted someone to support you and support us through that, and or just talk to us, ask us how we're doing, and remember that there is no gap between us, like maybe age, yeah, but that shouldn't matter, I think, because like you said that you were struck by the powerful voices of the youth, and so carry that feeling, like we're continuing to carry on this even after the march. We've carried it on, so carry on that awe and talk to us, and remember you were a kid with fears, and maybe even now you're still afraid, and just hold on to that when you hear of these tragedies and think, this is what they're feeling.
Keep doing the question? Okay. So I think that to continue with that, it's really your support, you know. Even you being here, if you were the only one in the room, us coming back to something like that where someone's still supporting us gives us a lot of motivation. Because I do, at the end of the day, think this movement is something the youth really relates to. That's why we're so driven by it. And so yeah, just the support that when you come here, it really does mean a lot. I really like everyone here. It really does mean a lot. It gives someone like a breath of fresh air to like come back to a supporting mindset. And in terms of doing something past that, join us on marches if there's ever a march again. Anything you can do, any research you could do, how we said to educate people. When an adult says it, it's still perceived more as like, oh, okay, if adult says it, now I get it more, you know? And so when you talk to younger people about it, we still always look up to our adults. So when an adult is telling us something, we listen, especially if it's something that's helping us. I don't know if every other kid does, but.
So, using an I statement, I personally feel there are mainly two ways, the best ways, well, three actually, help. One is actually more for the broader All Saints community, so I'll get to that later. But firstly, for anyone personally who just wants to help, I'd say those two things you can do. Vote. That's kind of the first obvious. Vote for people that get a thing. And the second is donate. There's also, if you are in a place that you can be financially if you can be financially generous to people that support your beliefs, you can donate to that so that they can get better outreach and then vote for them, and hopefully more people with them, and they'll get elected into office. Those are the two things that, yes, you can do personally that I think at this point would make the biggest difference, as we can't pass laws, unfortunately. And I think for the broader All Saints community, kind of jumping off of what Anne Moette said, is just include us more. I think there should be a lot more opportunities for youth to get involved. I mean, yeah, we get to serve communion, that's nice, but at the moment, I feel that that's all there is. I think there should be more opportunities for youth forums, and especially, in my opinion, more opportunities for youth to preach. I mean, not just seniors. I think I heard a junior preach once, and that's the only other time I've heard a non-senior preach, and that was because she was leaving. I think there needs to be opportunities for younger kids to preach, and more often, like I'd personally been wanting to ask, but I've been too shy because I'm way younger than a senior. And I think that's kind of the easiest way for all things, is because we have voices, we're going through a traumatic experience, we want to speak. We want to let our voices heard. And I think that's kind of a good way to get us kind of, it's even emotionally supporting for us to include us because we feel like we're part of the team. We're part of the people making the change.
A question. I was a senior when Columbine happened, and it was a tragedy, and it was on the news, and then everybody kind of moved on. And then over the last 18 years, I've watched this happen over and over again. But this one seems different. And I've been trying to rack my brain why this is different. And it seems to me a lot has to do with social media. I feel like I know Emma and David. I feel like I was there. I feel like I know what they're continuing to go through. Can you kind of talk about in your roles, in your lives, if you think, is it social media, and how do you think we can continue to use social media for this movement?
Social media has definitely changed everything, and I think it's, obviously it's super important, but something that, going back to your question and your question incorporating, a lot of stuff that you can do to help us is to promote our voices on social media platforms, and it's super, super easy. I know a lot of you go on Facebook. Literally, if you see Emma Gonzalez's tweet, immediately retweet, immediately, because it doesn't even matter if you don't have that many followers. The more notes that it has on it, the more people are going to see it because it gets more popular. Always promote our voices, and a simple way to do that is through social media. And I think one of the reasons that Parkland was such a big deal was because what Phoebe was talking about earlier is you get really sad. And Columbine, I think, was really sad, and everyone was just sad. And you get overwhelmed by all of the things that are happening. You can choose to be overwhelmed, or you can choose to be inspired and motivated. And I think what happened at Parkland, we were sick of being sad, and we decided to do something about it. And that's what's happening now. So something that we need to do is continue the inspiration and continue the motivation, and not let this die out. So continue to spread the word through social media, and talk to everyone that you can about it. Be like, oh, what'd you have for dinner? I don't care, vote. That's really what you can do.
So Gray, I was going to just actually ask you to take the mic and share a little bit about the work that you're doing, because we have 2 minutes left, and so maybe kind of our final comment around the video, and because that ties into some opportunities where we can continue to get engaged.
Coincidentally, I was going to take the mic and talk about that and try and fit it into the question that was asked. But so basically, I am working on a documentary about gun violence that was inspired by the march. So I want to thank all the people who did donate to allow us to go and have that experience, because it was really helpful for me to have that in order to be able to do this. But so me, another friend from my school who's also a youth, and then also a lot of friends from my school and Rory are all helping me work on a documentary about gun violence. And it's going to premiere here hopefully sometime in July. Juliana back there has been helping a lot with it. And I encourage you all to go and see it if you're here and you're in town. And it's hopefully gonna be something that's eye-opening and bring a lot to the movement. And I don't know, I don't want to give too much away. So just come see it and you'll see what it's all about.
All right, let's thank them, please.